After the Bosman ruling but before social media, English football underwent a period where wages skyrocketed and behavior was unsupervised, spawning a group of players known as the Baby Bentley generation. It was an era of Dionysian excess on an industrial scale, from tapes in a Napa to spit roasting at the Grosvenor House Hotel. As power shifted from chairmen and managers to agents and players, the latter exercised their newfound leverage in a host of different ways, few of them edifying. Right at the heart of it all, like a footballing zealot, was the so-called king of bling, Kieron Dyer, a quick-footed midfielder with lightning pace, signed by Newcastle United from Ipswich Town for £6 million, on wages of £60,000 a week. He played for England 33 times, but is as much remembered now for his litany of injuries as his on-field prowess. Now working back at Ipswich Town where he began, Dyer, 39, has released his autobiography, A Warts and All Portrait of This Period, which also contains painful revelations about the UAL abuse he suffered as a child from his great-uncle. It is an unsparing, honest and, in many ways, difficult read as much for the insights it offers into the game as Dyer's personal behavior. There is, for instance, a tremendous amount of human waste being put in places it shouldn't go, whether that be a senior pro relieving himself on the floor of the Ipswich Town dressing room and telling Dyer to clean it up, or the England U20 side reacting to being knocked out of the World Cup by collectively dumping into a carrier bag and hanging it off the door of their manager's hotel room. And that's before we get to the fight with Lee Bowyer. Marcus Rashford must keep calm and carry on. GQ, you talk in the book about your upbringing in Ipswich and a memorable football game involving your dad, KD. I was about 12. My dad and a big crowd of his friends used to play on Sundays down at Christchurch Park. My dad was a bad loser, and my dad's attitude when his team were losing was that it was never his fault, it was always somebody else's. Then, this guy Doty, he lit a cigarette. It might even have been a spliff knowing Doty. My dad was like, put it out, and he said, piss off, Charlie, I'm having a smoke. Then they started throwing punches at each other and other players broke it up. So my dad marched off to his car, grabbed his bag, and out came this machete. I don't know why he had a machete in his bag, but he started chasing Doty down the park, and Doty's saving grace was finding a teenage boy on a BMX. He pushed him off the bike, got on, and just got away from my dad. The scary thing was, it went silent for a bit, then my dad put the knife back in the bag and said, right, let's carry on playing football, and they did. That must have been a frightening thing to witness. I was in shock, I think. But as I got older I realized that my dad had a reputation around Ipswich, and you didn't mess with Charlie Dyer. I used that to my advantage in some of the scrapes I got into. It got me out of trouble a few times. Did you think twice before including in the book the details of the abuse you suffered? When I spoke to Oliver Holt about the book, one always said I would be honest, and I wouldn't water it down to make me come across in a certain way. So once I decided to do the book, it was never in question that I wouldn't talk about the abuse. When the Daily Mail serialized it, it got such a positive reaction with people talking about my bravery, but the biggest thing for me was that since that article appeared about a week ago, I've had about 10 people stop me and say that it happened to them as well, and it's helping them to speak about it. No regrets, then. I can see why people don't talk about abuse. At the time, I was worried about my dad killing the guy, but since I've told the secret, I've seen the effect it's had upon my family because they become the victims. They have the guilt to deal with and blame themselves for not seeing the signs. So it's a hard process, but the truth is better than keeping it secret. Jermaine Jenis on why Manchester City's quadruple dream ended in tears. Has the book been a form of therapy? It is kind of therapeutic. The more you tell it, the easier it becomes. I'm just thankful that I got the help from Peter Kay, the late co-founder of Sporting Chance. Because I thought the person I was just down to the way I was born. Didn't realize that it was the abuse that was forming me, that had made me a person with a F***ku attitude to the world and didn't want to show vulnerability. I saw him at the right time and it changed me, cause I do think the way I was going, not able to trust people. I don't think I'd be alive now. Or I'd have been on my way to being a very lonely old man. Getty Images. The revelations about the gambling in the England camp are perhaps not surprising, but the sums of money involved are eye-watering. When Kevin Keegan was England boss at the World Cup in 2002, everything was controlled. There was no ridiculous money being gambled. But in 2004 it really kicked off. And since doing the book, Peter Crouch has come out and said, yes, England had a card school in his time, but the amounts involved were nothing like what we were doing in Euro 2004. When it came out, there was a lot of people saying we were addicts, but I never thought we were. I just thought it was a combination of boredom, competitive people, and thinking you were always going to win. Did it have an impact? I can't speak for anyone else, but for me, I was 40,000 pounds down at one stage and it was affecting me. I can't say how it affected me on the pitch because I'd only played 6 minutes in that whole tournament, but if I'd been a regular, I don't know. If you had a run of bad days at that tournament, you could be 500,000 pounds down, and I would think that's got to have a negative impact upon your performance. What does it feel like to lose 40,000 pounds? It feels terrible. It gets to the stage where you feel you have to win it back, which is dangerous. Back then, 40,000 pounds wasn't even a week's wages, but I still know that's an obscene amount of money that some people don't earn in a year. It's a horrible feeling and a dangerous feeling. Do you still gamble? Yes. About once a month, me and a few mates will have a poker night, but it's safe to say that if you win a few £100, you've done very well. But that's all, really. I've never been one to bet on horses, thankfully. Football doesn't need stupid VAR technology. You write in the book about the poisonous atmosphere that exists when playing for England and how scared players were. Could England learn anything from Wales's experience in Euro 2016? There are just different expectation levels. The fear is a big problem for England. When we qualified for this World Cup, Gareth Southgate in his press conference said, "The biggest thing our players have to overcome is playing without fear." I know people say that players who are earning hundreds of thousands a week should be able to deal with pressure, but everyone's human and everyone has emotions. You can talk about Brazil and Germany and say they have the same pressures, but they've won tournaments, got a winning mentality. While we get it rammed in our faces that the last time we won was 1966, so the pressure just builds. Getty Images. Do you fear that the fight you had with your Newcastle United teammate, Lee Bowyer, in 2005, will overshadow everything else you achieved in the game? Not really. That incident was unprecedented. There was the David Batty and Graham Lasso thing, but that was handbags by comparison. You very rarely see two players from the same side going at it like that. Bowyer and Dyer were sent off after a fight sparked by Dyer not passing to Bowyer. So it's to be expected that that gets a lot of coverage still. It's out there on its own. The club did try to appeal my red card and I think I was quite innocent, really, in that incident. Well, having said that, obviously I did tell him that I thought he was F***king S***T and that was the reason I didn't pass him the ball, which was a bit harsh. Laughs, but stuff like that happens all the time and you don't expect it to escalate the way it did. Afterwards, I was angry and mad, and then Alan Shearer came into the dressing room and told us we were missing the cup semi-finals, so then you feel guilt. And Graham Souness comes into the dressing room and tells us he's going to beat the pair of us up, so then you start to worry. And Lee gets all the blame, so I feel sorry for him. What a crazy day that was. Yet you and Bowyer seemed to make friends quickly after it. We were friends all the time. He wears his heart on his sleeve, but if I had to get in the trenches, the first person I'd want with me would be Lee. Obviously, it didn't help that we'd already had a man sent off and were losing 3-0, and we were just embarrassed by that already. The man who had previously been sent off was Stephen Taylor, who was dismissed for handling the ball, but then indulged in some risible acting to suggest the ball had hit him in the chest. What was his reaction? When we got into the dressing room, Stephen Taylor was just getting out of the shower and he said, "What's up? Is the game off?" When we told him what had happened, you could see the relief on his face. He knew he was off the hook, because what he did was worse than what we'd done. Football tourism, the good, the bad and the messy. The picture you paint of top-level football in your era is fairly unpleasant. Has the culture changed, or have players just got better at hiding stuff? Social media has made a big difference in players' behavior, but clubs have wised up too, and they help the players and guide them. They get all the right people in place when they get their first contract, advise on the right places to live, and they have player liaison officers, which we didn't. I'm not using that as an excuse for my behavior. We still knew what was right and what was wrong. But we've definitely wised up as a country. We've just won the U20 World Cup just won the U19 tournament, U17 tournament. The penny has finally dropped. It was an unprecedented time in English football. The temptation to overindulge must have been massive. It's not really an excuse, but a lot of us come from poor families, poor backgrounds, and all of a sudden you're a millionaire overnight. The fame, the wealth, the temptation, the celebrity status. You get put on a pedestal. It's hard not to love that and let loose. And I let loose. When you look back now you think, what the hell were you doing? But that's what happens when you're an immature kid, I suppose. The book almost reads like an apology. Is that what it is? It's not an apology. What's great about the book is that because I did it a few years after retiring, I talk about that time in detail, but I'm talking about how I see that situation now. So I can kind of look back and analyze it. Reading over it and looking back at it, I can't help thinking what I was. Are you financially secure now? I'm doing my badges, working at Ipswich. They're developing a pathway where I go up the chain. And hopefully get to work with the first team. I'm an ambitious guy and management would be the pinnacle. But I've got a long way to go. If Mick McCarthy were to retire or lose his job at the end of the season, I'm not going to say I would want to be the next Ipswich Town manager. I want to learn my trade with the kids and work my way up. One of the fortunate things about my career is that I played in every position except center half and goalkeeper, so I do know the game and I can see the game in so many different ways. I want to pass on my knowledge on the pitch to the kids and also my knowledge off the pitch. I know the do's and don'ts. Old too soon, smart too late. My story, headline, £20 by Kieron Dyer is out now.